Good morning. Oh, it's working. Good morning and welcome to All People's Church Unitarian Universalist. My name is Marianne Clark and I'll be serving as your co-celebrant for worship this morning. It's great to see so many people here for our Sunday service. We extend special greetings to any of you who might be visiting for the first or the second time. If you haven't yet done so, feel free to add your name and contact information at the visitors table located next to the front door. Today, we're very happy to welcome Lori King Nelson to our pulpit. To introduce you to Lori, I will reiterate the bio she provided for the courier. Lori King Nelson is a cradle roll disciple, growing up in Fort Worth First Christian Church, the church her family has called home since 1917. Lori is a member of Pastors for Texas Children and is active in the DOC community, filling the pulpit in area disciples' churches, volunteering at disciples' food pantries, and occasionally providing church services for the Juliet Fowler communities. She's a lifelong learner, an artist, an avid traveler, having lived across the U.S. and internationally. Lori holds a Bachelor of Science in Comparative Religious Studies from Texas Wesleyan University, go Rams, and a Master of Divinity from the Bright Divinity School at TCU. Lori currently serves as program director of the Dallas Furniture Bank, a nonprofit that provides the basic furniture needed for people transitioning from homelessness and other crises. Lori has 4 children, 3 grandchildren, a flock of chickens, an enormous potbelly pig named Chris P. Bacon, and a duck whose name I don't know. Lori, welcome to All People's Church. Before we continue on to worship, there are some announcements this morning. First, we say a big thank you to all who participated in our church fundraiser, dinner, and service auction last night. The sanctuary was transformed, and as you can see, is still partially transformed, into a grand Renaissance fair. The food was delicious. The turkey legs were this big. And many fine goods and services were donated and sold for the benefit of All People's Church. Special thanks to all of the organizers, the decorators, the database managers, the cooks, the bakers, the servers, the auctioneers, the donors, and of course the purchasers, and especially the setup and takedown volunteers who came early and stayed very late. I'm not sure that Mary even went home, although she does tell me she changed clothes. It took a village to make it a big success. Thank you all for a job very well done. And we have another opportunity to gather here tomorrow for music and fellowship. The Spectrum Chamber Music Society presents their concert, Brahms, Tangos, and A Touch of Rota, here tomorrow night, Monday, November 14th at 7:30 p.m. Admission is free. However, free will donations are very welcome. A special feature is that our own Misha Beresnev will be performing on piano with a quartet to present the Brahms Quartet in G minor for piano and strings. So you know that's going to be really, really good. We'll be hosting a reception in the library following the concert. If you're coming to the concert, please consider bringing a plate of cookies, cheese and crackers, finger sandwiches, whatever, to share. We'd also be grateful for any cash donations to offset the purchases of reception food and drink. Check with David Bindi. David, are you in here? He's probably in the kitchen. If you have questions about the concert or the reception. I have one other announcement. There are some beautiful cookbooks left from the service auction last night. Take what you want and leave a donation, $2, $5, $10. These are in Coleman Hall, and they're kind of in that back corner there. We ask you to settle into a spirit of worship and reflection as Misha presents the musical prelude.
Good morning. Will you prepare your hearts as we enter the call to worship? Let them not say, "We did not see it, we saw." Let them not say, "We did not hear it, we heard." Let them not say, "They did not taste it, we ate, we trembled." Let them not say, "It was not spoken, not written." We spoke. We witnessed with voices and hands. Let them not say, "They did nothing. We did not enough." Let them say, as they must say something, We see, we hear, we eat and tremble, we witness and speak. We do all love allows. Come, let us bring the gift of love into this space.
We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Please stand as you are willing and able and join in singing our opening hymn, number 120, Turn Back, Turn Back. Please join me in our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Please be seated. Lori invites the young and the young at heart to come forward for our story for all ages.
I joked a few minutes ago to my sister that it would be a miracle if I didn't fall down the steps. So it's okay to laugh if I do it, okay? I fall a lot. Well, you have my permission, because sometimes slapstick comedy is fun. Right, but I would still be laughing, so just call the ambulance. So Mary noted that I have a duck, and she does not know the name of that duck. So did you hear that I have a pig also? And chickens? and dogs and cats. And sometimes we even get like raccoons and stuff that come up to our house, but we don't let them live there. We just feed them and send them on their way. Well, how we got this duck was very unique. One morning, we went out to take care of our new baby chickens, and there was a baby duck in the baby chicken area. And now nothing could have gotten in there because it's all closed up. So we have no idea where this baby duck came from. Y'all can just pass them around. Oh, uh-huh. Well, what a surprise that would be. Godzilla. Yes. No, the pictures are some different. So here's a picture of the duck in front of my pig. My pig, we call him Chris Chris. Did y'all get to see the picture of the duck? The baby duck? Okay. So the baby duck's not so much of a baby anymore. She's growing up. They do grow up. Well, the thing is, the duck and the baby chick. So we named the duck Quackers, because why not? Yes, and the baby chick is called Chick Chick, because why not? It's easy. Yes?
I saw a video that this person named their duck, and I heard the name of the quack.
Well, you know, Quackers has had to learn how to navigate life in the midst of animals that are completely different from her. So you think I should get more ducks? Did you hear how many animals I have? It might not be the best idea. Yes.
Get a lot of ducks until you get 100.
Well, I think that Chick Chick understands that Quackers is different. And so Chick Chick follows Quackers around the yard, and whatever Quackers is doing, Chick Chick waits until she's done and then follows her again. So all of my chickens roost up in the tree, and but Quackers can't get up there because she's not a chicken. She can't jump like that, and her feet won't hold on to the branches because they have different.
They're webbed.
Yeah, they're webbed. That's right.
They're built for water. They are built for fire.
Exactly.
Do you know how chickens can actually fly?
They can, because mine go back and forth into my neighbor's yard. Yeah. So they usually have to throw them back over. Right.
But they have like these adaptations to the land and the water.
So my point with the whole story about the duck and the chicken is that sometimes, well, there's patience for sure, but sometimes we have to be friends with people who are different from us. Yeah, we do every day. School, work, our neighborhood. Yes. Yes, that was the duck learning to eat pizza. Who knew, right? I have no idea. But you know what? When I feed the pig in the morning, the duck and the chickens come running because they want some of it too, because he gets the good stuff. So they just get feed. No, feed. Like chicken feed. It's a kind of food. It's like crushed corn and stuff like that. But you were right. They do get fed. Yes.
They only get that one, and the other ones that I just saw, they
Yes. Well, I want to make sure, and I don't think that I even have to tell y'all this because you already know it. You've already said and shared with me that you know exactly what it's like to help others that are different and to make sure that they are comfortable. Yes, sometimes it's us who are the different ones. And I think, honestly, all of us are different. And we just have to be very open and affirming and loving to everyone we come up to. Right?
If someone's being mean, then don't be nice to them. Maybe to try nice at first, but if they refuse to and they just keep on being like weirdo.
Well, you choose for yourself what's right for you, right? That's for sure. So, So when we go out in the world today, if y'all see a duck on your travels, you might wonder if that is the brother or sister of my Quacker's duck. Yeah. Y'all have a good day, okay? What did you need to say?
I went to the park and I saw a pond and there was a whole bunch of ducks, and I think they were boys and girls.
Yes. We had to go on the internet to figure out that ours was a girl because I've never raised ducks before. Yeah. So, y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for coming down for this moment.
We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. We support our community outreach efforts with our Share the Plate program. It is our custom to share the undesignated cash offerings of our collection plate. Recently, we delivered a check to the East Side Community Assistance, who is our beneficiary for July, August, and September, in the amount of $875. Thank you for your generosity. Our recipient today is Raices, the Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services. The offering will now be gratefully received. Will the ushers please step forward?
The reading this morning comes from a protest poem by Franny Choi. She is a queer Korean-American protest poet, playwright, teacher, and organizer. Before the apocalypse, there was the apocalypse of boats, boats of prisoners, boats cracking under sky iron, boats making corpses bloom like algae on the shore. Before the apocalypse, there was the apocalypse of the bombed mosque. There was the apocalypse of the taxi driver warped by flame. There was the apocalypse of the leaving and the having left, of my mother unsticking herself from her mother's grave as the plane barreled down the runway. Before the apocalypse, there was the apocalypse of planes. There was the apocalypse of pipelines legislating their way through sacred water, and the apocalypse of the dogs, before which was the apocalypse of the dogs and the hoses, before which the apocalypse of dogs and slave catchers whose faces glowed by lantern light. Before the apocalypse of bees, the apocalypse of buses, border fence apocalypse, coat hanger apocalypse, apocalypse in the textbook's selective silences. There was the apocalypse of the settlement and the soda machine, the apocalypse of the settlement and the jars of scalps. There was the bedlam of the cannery, the radioactive rain, the chairless martyr demanding a name. I was born from an apocalypse and have come to tell you what I know, which is that the apocalypse began when Columbus praised God and lowered his anchor. It began when a continent was drawn into cutlets. It began when Kublai Khan told Marco, begin at the beginning. By the time the apocalypse began, the world had already ended. It ended every day for a century or two. It ended, and another ending world spun in its place. It ended and we woke up and ordered Greek coffees, drew the hot liquid through our teeth, as everywhere the apocalypse rumbled. The apocalypse remembered our dear beloved apocalypse. It drifted slowly from the trees around us, so loud we stopped hearing it. Will you join us as we sing hymn number 129, Let Love Continue Long?
We honor our time together with shared stories and news from the congregation. Each week, there is a journal outside the entrance to the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory or hope. Also, at any time during our service, you are welcome to come forward and light a candle in our meditation center here at the side of the chancel. We focus our thoughts today on the many people in the world who face floods, droughts, and fires and war. We turn our thoughts as well to those seeking refuge in another country, to those who are burdened by sickness, hunger, and pain, by sorrow and anxiety, violence and loss. We pause this morning to share our care for these people and also for those closer to home about whom we are concerned. And from our book of memory and hope, we include the following. First, this is a kind of recitation. 8 decades, 80 years, 960 months, 4,174 weeks, 29,219 days, 701,256 hours, 42,076,256, oh, I'm sorry. That's also hours. Okay, it must be minutes. I think that's supposed to be minutes. 2,524,521,600 seconds on November 10th. Happy birthday to Patrick Gutierrez. That was amazing. Also from our book of memory and hope, Rosalind Hunter's uncle, Julian Hunter, died, the last of her father's family. She would like the family to be in your thoughts. May the warmth of this community extend to all who are rejoicing or hurting in the wider world. The stories that live in this community are cherished, even when unshared, as we keep one another in mind during the week ahead. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain, and the soft, gentle coming of love. We will begin with 1 minute of silence.
Thank you for the beautiful music. Wow. And thank you for having me here this morning. I was very excited to be able to worship with you. I have told some others, my sister travels around with me throughout Texas. Wherever I preach, there she is, and I'm really grateful for my sidekick. I was also really excited to get to see Ashley this morning. Ashley and I went to school together, and I just love her so much. Thank you so much for being co-celebrant, Mary. I appreciate you.
My pleasure.
So about 100 years ago, as I sat in my first religion class in community college, Hap Lyda stood before a room of about 30 students and asked that we take out one piece of paper and write down the 10 Commandments. He would award 1 point for each correct commandment and a bonus 5 points for anyone who had them in the correct order. Easy, right? Actually, I failed that in an epic way. I blocked out all but 3 and included 2 that were not even commandments. Performance anxiety, I'm sure. So next he had us turn our paper over and write the 613 commandments found in the Torah. No one received a point for that one. But we did learn that all of these commandments, 248 do's and 365 don'ts, were mostly rules to live by in order to have a just and harmonious society. What do you do with 613 of them, though? Especially those that no longer pertain to our society in the 21st century. Well, that's where we find the 10 Commandments and comparable social laws from nearly every other faith system, helpful to our desire to be set free from the ills of our world. These rules are kind of a Cliff's Notes of community living, and worth contemplating a bit, specifically to consider what exactly we mean when we say to be set free. In his State of the Union address on January 6, 1941, then President Franklin Delano Roosevelt outlined a vision of 4 fundamental freedoms. He described them in this way. The first is freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God or not in their own way, everywhere in the world. The third is freedom from want, which, when we translate that into world terms, means economic understandings which will secure every nation a healthy peacetime for its inhabitants, everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, and that means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor, anywhere in the world. That is no vision of a distant millennium. It is a definite basis for a kind of world attainable in our own time and our own generation. The late ethicist Glenn Stawson said, "We really can have a world like this if we just change our approach to one another, whether on a local, national, or global level." And he offers nonviolent, loving steps to ending war, suffering, and oppression. He says, "When we look at the prophets of old, we find a specific social vision drawn from and embedded in concrete practices. Delivering the poor from poverty, opposing those who oppress the weak, ending violence, and welcoming outcasts into our community. If the God of creation is revealed in these acts, then that has something to say about how we perceive and respond in our world. Stossen's theory is called just peacemaking, and I strongly encourage everyone to put this on their reading list. Now, FDR certainly makes a good case for what our responsibility to each other looks like with his list. It offers more than just a dictionary definition of freedom, and instead a thoughtful expression of what freedom looks and feels like, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole. And yet, as good as this definition and other philosophical and political ideations of freedom that both predated and followed this are, today I would offer that one of the most compelling understandings of freedom comes from Paul's letter to the Galatians. Galatians are arguing about the law, specifically Mosaic law, and how it did or did not apply to their life together as followers of Jesus. This was particularly important to figure out, as the community was a mixture of Gentiles and Jews. Many practical and pressing questions arose, which Paul addresses throughout the letter. Perhaps the most notable was the question of circumcision for the Gentile believers, which Paul replies to in a significant way, assuring them that there is no need for that or any other identity marker. The true expression of their faith is to be a loving and accepting community. Throughout the whole letter, it seems, Paul references the idea of freedom and the gift that it gives to the church to live out her faith, and then offers an even more detailed description that serves as a powerful definition of freedom. You see, for Paul, freedom is less about freedom from something and more about a call to or for something. He is quick to point out that the freedom won for communities of faith is not just license to do whatever we please, but rather is something that brings us together. Mark Douglas describes it like this. The idea that freedom means the absence of encumbrances may be popular, but it does not hold weight. Freedom is not the absence of entanglements. Entanglements are the means by which freedom becomes meaningful. Freedom is not separation from relationships. It is a feature of relationships that becomes especially apparent as a result of our relationships with those different from us. This very sentiment is repeated throughout time and is an integral part of every faith system that has ever been. Put simply, freedom draws us into community. The call to freedom, according to Paul, and according to Moses, Muhammad, and Jesus, is a call to love. Love in Hinduism is a sacrament. It teaches that one gives up selfishness in love, not expecting anything in return. The word for love Paul uses is agape, and it's a tall order. This kind of love goes far beyond what the law demands. It is an all-encompassing way of life, constantly seeking to serve the neighbor. It is pure and selfless and embraces a universal, unconditional love that transcends and persists regardless of circumstance. Agape love is the highest form of love that reflects the love God showed to the world through this magnificent creation of life. I have little doubt that Paul chose this word quite intentionally. In the midst of bickering and power struggles in the church in Galatia, Paul needed to do more than just call on the people to say they were sorry and to have them play nicely with one another. He could have used the word philia for that, representing brotherly love of getting along. Instead, Paul calls them out for their behavior toward each other and reminds them of the exceedingly high calling they have to each other as a community reflective of Jesus' teachings. He is pointing to them and to us to the biggest picture possible about what it means to not just live together in coexistence, but to truly embrace the freedom given to us to live together in a community marked by love, a reflection of the kingdom of God. Now, Paul knew such a love wasn't easy, and that humanity is prone to use our freedom to dominate others in systems of oppression rather than in systems that hold each other in this kind of mutual holy love. He addresses the baseness of ourselves with a discussion of the flesh, for which for Paul was a way of defining the motivating factor for our actions and inactions. For Paul, living by the flesh was a self-centered living, in direct opposition to the God-centered living a life guided by the Spirit would bring. And it doesn't seem like there is much middle ground. He pushed the Galatians to pick a direction, arguing, you can't be both for yourself first and for others first. It just doesn't work that way. Sounds a little like all the prophets, doesn't it? Paul goes on to remind us of the greatest commandment, to love your neighbor as yourself. That, for Paul, answers the questions about legalities that were being raised in the community. The whole law, summed up for Paul, is that we have been freed to love one another. And that means setting aside our own ambitions, our own desires to be first, and instead serve one another as purely and lovingly as we can. This is our calling to freedom, to love. It came to Muhammad and those who followed him. It came to the Buddha and those who followed him. It came to the disciples and those who followed Jesus. It came to virtually every other community to whom every prophet wrote throughout time. And it comes to us, still as relevant as it was tens of thousands of years ago. 2,000 and some years later, we, as God's people, are still trying to figure out what it means to live into this freedom of grace that we were given by God. Over and over again, we fall into those traps of the flesh and work ourselves into systems that only serve to bolster ourselves while others are oppressed. We become obsessed with who is in and who is out, and argue over the rules for inclusion in our communities. This, I think, is one of those examples of corporate sin, which we participate in on different levels as individuals, but seems to be a reality of our communal existence here on earth. There are so many things in our world, so many examples where we have fallen dreadfully short of our calling to freedom. Before the pandemic, there were 11 million children in the United States suffering from real hunger, not sure where their next meal would come from. That number is now 17 million. 1.4 million of those are in Texas. In Tarrant County, a full 40% of children are experiencing hunger on a daily basis. I don't have the numbers of how many children are being served through the Tarrant Area Food Bank and other organizations involved in hunger relief efforts, but I'm appalled that we live in a world, in a country, in a state, in a community where so many people are lacking one of life's most basic needs. The Buddha called hunger the greatest of afflictions. We can do better. And what about a place to live? Pre-pandemic, nearly 15,000 children in Tarrant County were homeless. That's enough to fill 27 middle schools. Today, that number is hovering around 21,000, with about 40% of them being LGBTQ youth who have experienced discrimination and family rejection and have nowhere to go and are kept from life-saving, gender-affirming health care. We can do better. 38,000 veterans are homeless in the U.S., with around 2,000 here in Texas. That's about 11% of the homeless population. Even with the good work of the VA and other organizations, those who have served our country, who have given of their lives so that we can continue to claim freedom, are underserved and underappreciated on even the most basic level. So many desperately in need of counseling as they transition from military service and learn to live with their moral injuries sustained in war. We can do better. Our southern border reflects an international humanitarian crisis. Still, I have heard heartbreaking and gut-wrenching stories through organizations in Guatemala and Honduras that reflect horrors no one should have to endure. I work with families that are so traumatized from their journey they cannot even speak of it. War, gangs, famine, violence. It is not difficult to see why families might be forced to flee for their very lives. I cannot even begin to imagine how desperate my life circumstances would have to be in order to risk everything for the hope of sheer survival. Not just my own life, but that of my children. And yet, that is what's happening. And when each wave of asylum seekers comes pleading for assistance, we are ill-equipped and unable to handle such a cry from our neighbors. So many children and adults have died in federal custody, and the stories of the conditions in which they live are reprehensible. I personally witnessed this as I traveled to Nogales in 2020 to study migration in the borderlands. My heart absolutely breaks at the thought of children being taken from their parents and young children left to fend for themselves in large rooms with only aluminum foil like blankets and concrete floors and constant light that prevents sleeping. Now, I appreciate that many things related to this are political, and we can agree or disagree on legalities and regulations and responses within our criminal justice system as to how to approach immigration. But I also hope that we can agree that children who have no more say in where they are taken than my own did this morning should be kept safe and healthy. We can do better. Wendell Berry said, "Our destructiveness has not been and is not inevitable. People who use that excuse are morally incompetent. They are cowardly and they are lazy. Humans don't have to live by destroying the sources of their life. People can change. They can learn to do better." We have to do better. If any of the prophets were writing to us today, I think they would deliver much of the same message as Paul did to the Galatians. And to humanity today, they might say, You were called to freedom for so much more than this. You were given freedom as a gift from God in order that you might love as God loves. So let love lead you. This is what it's all about. Love your neighbor as yourself. We are encouraged to both live and be guided by the Spirit. In these instances where the world is so far from where it should be, the Spirit stirs within us. It is the Spirit that nudges us, that creates in us an uneasiness and a hunger for justice that we cannot ignore. The Holy Spirit, the one let loose on the world at Pentecost, is a holy troublemaker that shakes everything up and makes it so we cannot just continue with life as we know it. So how do we step up? Perhaps we could use the words we have heard from prophets throughout time as a checklist of sorts for what happens when we live into freedom. In our discernment of what we are supposed to do next, what would happen if we asked ourselves, is this a response of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control? I don't know about you, but I imagine if I ran through this list every time I was trying to respond to a difficult situation or a difficult person, I might save myself from some less than stellar decisions, and my relationships with others would probably be a lot more loving. Above all else, we, as a body of faith and spirituality, are called to love. An agape love that models the kind of love God has for us. It is the basic fabric, not just of our society, but of our understanding of what it means to follow the examples of those gone before who exemplify a calling of selfless and enduring love. The extent to which we live into this calling is in itself the measure of our discipleship. So may we be so faithful and bold as to try to live into it each and every day. May we love our neighbors and do nothing from selfish ambition, but instead mark our lives with love. For this is the freedom we have been given in this life. This is what we're called to do. And thanks be to God for that. Will you join us in our closing hymn, number 318, We Would Be One.
May this flame that has brightened our time together warm our hearts, light our paths, and inspire our vision as we go once again along our separate ways.
This morning, we remember that we are held like a leaf floating along a river named love. We take our dips, but we come back up and continue on our journey. For love is the power of the universe, and it cannot fail. Go in peace. The service has ended. All are now welcome to stay and join us for coffee, refreshments, and conversation in the library to the rear of the sanctuary.